The night my parents told me it's too risky after I asked for $70,000 to start my tech company was the moment something inside me cracked. I had proof clients a working prototype, yet they dismissed me instantly as if my dreams were fragile toys. I tried to swallow the sting, tried to pretend their words didn't carve into me. But what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family loyalty and what people are capable of when desperation hits. And the real shock, it didn't even start with me. I'm Ayla, and for as long as I can remember, I grew up learning how to shrink myself inside my own home. From the outside, our brick house in Austin looked warm and picture perfect, but inside, everything revolved around one person, my younger sister, Rosie. I was the quiet, disciplined child, the one who brought home good grades as if it were my duty, while Rosie was the sparkling center of the family, the one who deserved stage's applause and endless investment. When I was 16, all I wanted was a used car so I wouldn't have to take the bus in the blazing Texas heat. My parents told me it was unnecessary that I was responsible enough to manage without it. I believed them until Rosie turned 16. That night, fairy lights draped across our backyard, guests applauded, and a brand new car with a giant bow rolled down the driveway. I clapped, too, pretending it didn't sting. At one point, I begged for $500 to attend a summer coding program hosted by a university. I explained everything the curriculum, how much it would help me. My mother frowned and said, "There's no need to waste money. You can learn online." 2 weeks later, Rosie was flown to New York for a $12,000 acting camp, complete with new luggage and a celebratory dinner. Everyone called her talented. No one asked what I dreamed of. It wasn't just the money. It was the way attention shifted in the room. When I won first place in a statewide science competition, I walked through the front door trembling with pride. But the living room was filled with relatives gushing over Rosie's ballet photos. My mother glanced at my certificate and said, "That's nice, honey," then turned back to brag about Rosie's costume. My award vanished under a stack of magazines by evening, so I became independent by necessity. I cooked my own dinners. I handled my own homework. I learned not to expect anyone to clap for me. When I earned a partial scholarship to a prestigious university and packed to move across the country, my parents simply reminded me about the high cost of living. Meanwhile, Rosie enrolled in an expensive arts program, and the whole family hosted a farewell party for her. Still, a small part of me hoped adulthood would change things, that effort and results would finally matter. I worked late shifts, juggled jobs, and dreamed of building something real. I thought that once I proved myself, once I had something solid to show, my parents would finally see me. But the truth is, some patterns don't fade with time. Some wounds don't heal just because you grow older. And I was about to learn that in the hardest way possible. When I finally stepped into the tech world after graduation, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. Long nights, relentless deadlines, no safety nets. But for the first time, my effort meant something. After 2 years, I had managed to save about $40,000 money, scraped together from overtime shifts, careful budgeting, and saying no to every luxury. And then one day, everything clicked. A glaring gap in the construction industry, a prototype, and 8 companies willing to commit once the product was built. My idea wasn't a fantasy, it was viable. Real. I could finally build something of my own. I just needed $70,000 to bring it to life. So I did something I almost never did. I hoped my parents would choose me. I flew home for the weekend carrying printed plans, revenue projections, and a polished demo. I rehearsed in the mirror, imagining for once my parents looking at me with pride. When I stood in their living room laptop, open heart pounding, I truly believed this moment could rewrite our history. But when I finished, my father lowered his newspaper, unimpressed. "It's too risky," he said flatly. My mother nodded. "You already have a stable job. Don't gamble your life." They didn't ask questions. They didn't look at the numbers. They didn't even try. I closed my laptop, slowly swallowing a hurt that felt familiar, almost predictable. I told myself to breathe. I reminded myself that disappointment was not new. But what happened next wasn't disappointment. It was betrayal. Just a few months later, while I was debugging code past midnight in my tiny apartment, my mother called, sounding breathless with excitement. "Rosie's starting a luxury event company in Dallas," she said. "We're helping her launch. Helping her." The phrase echoed dangerously. Then I heard the real number, a 725K loan, a brand new BMW for her brand image, an office space in a trendy district, designer outfits, lavish parties for networking. All the things that were too risky for me were suddenly worth investing in for her. I stared at the wall for a long time after that call, my chest tight, my vision blurry. I wasn't naive. I knew Rosie had always been favored, but this was no longer favoritism. This was a decision that told me without hesitation exactly where I stood in my own family, and in that quiet apartment, lit only by the glow of my computer screen, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not yet, just clarity. Sharp, cold, undeniable. If I wanted a future, I would have to build it alone. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something painfully simple. I could spend years proving myself, and they would still choose her. Once I accepted that I was on my own, I made the hardest decision of my life. I mortgaged my small San Jose condo and combined that loan with the $40,000 I had saved. It was terrifying signing papers that tied my entire future to a fragile idea and an empty bank account. But fear felt cleaner than disappointment. At least, fear belonged to me. I rented a tiny office in an aging industrial building on the outskirts of the city. The paint peeled from the walls, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and the heater clanked like it was surviving its final winter. But to me, it was the beginning of something real. I hired Miguel, a fresh graduate with sharp instincts, and Rachel, who handled clients and logistics with warmth and grit. The three of us sat around a dented thrift store table, mapping out features, drawing wireframes, and cold calling potential customers. And then, reality hit. Hard. The first few months nearly crushed us. We worked 18-hour days. We ate cheap sandwiches and instant noodles. I coded until my wrists ached and my eyes burned. Some days, the app broke in ways I couldn't explain. Some days, potential clients ghosted us after showing interest. Then came the worst blow. A mid-sized construction company that promised to sign a major contract backed out at the last minute. Their email was cold and transactional, but the impact was devastating. That contract had been our lifeline. Without it, our budget evaporated. I sat in the dark office long after Miguel and Rachel had gone home, staring at the nearly empty payment spreadsheet. Rain tapped against the cracked window, the kind of slow, steady rhythm that made everything feel heavier. For a moment, I wondered if my parents had been right. Was it really too risky? Was I foolish to think anyone would believe in me? But then I remembered the sound of my father folding his newspaper, the flat tone of his voice, the certainty with which he dismissed me while saving every last ounce of faith for Rosie. And something inside me hardened. I refused to fail in a way that would prove them right. Just when I thought we were at the brink, an unexpected email appeared. A construction company in Sacramento wanted to try our software for a year. It wasn't a huge contract, but it was real steady, legitimate revenue. When we signed it, all three of us sat on the office floor, eating dollar pizza, laughing and crying at the same time. And while BuildFlow slowly regained its footing, news from Austin began to trickle in Rosie's luxury event. Company was collapsing. Her expenses ballooned, her client list evaporated, and the BMW she flaunted everywhere was eventually repossessed. My parents were sinking fast, and for the first time, they started looking in my direction. The first call came on a Thursday evening, just as I finished a meeting about a new BuildFlow update. My phone buzzed again and again until I finally picked up. My mother's voice trembled the moment she spoke. "Ayla, we need your help. The bank is threatening to take the house. If you could send $100,000, we can fix part of the debt." For a moment, I didn't breathe. $100,000. The amount I had scraped together through sleepless nights, the amount that represented every inch of my independence. Before I could form a response, my father took the phone. "You're successful now. You have money. We raised you. We invested in you. It's time you repay the family. Sell your home if you need to." Those last 4 words sliced through me. Sell your home. As if the place I fought for, the one I mortgaged to survive, was nothing more than a convenient asset to bail them out. I swallowed hard. Dad, I can't. This condo is all I have. It's the foundation that kept my company alive. Silence, then a heavy sigh. So you're choosing yourself over your family. Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I'm choosing fairness, I said quietly. Something I never got. My mother began to cry. My father muttered something about ingratitude. I hung up before their guilt could crush me. For the next week, the calls were non-stop. Messages stacked up. Rosie texted paragraphs, each dripping with entitlement. You're the only one who can fix this. You owe us. Stop being selfish. But nothing prepared me for what happened next. The day they showed up at my door. It was a warm autumn afternoon in San Jose when the doorbell rang repeatedly urgently. I expected a delivery, maybe a neighbor. Instead, when I opened the door, my parents stood there with Rosie by their side. My father looked stern, my mother tired, Rosie defiant with crossed arms and an expression that suggested she was the victim in all of this. We need to talk, my father said, brushing past me before I even invited him in. They settled on my couch, visibly uncomfortable in my small condo, a place that didn't match Rosie's former luxury aesthetic. I stood across from them, a wall of calm distance separating us. My mother began gently, as if softening me up. Ayla, what happened with Rosie's company? No one could have predicted it. The market changed. She just needs time. We all do. I said nothing. My father leaned forward. You have the ability to help. All we're asking is that you sell this place. Use the money to save the family. Rosie finally spoke, her tone thick with accusation. You know I didn't mean for things to fall apart, but you're doing well. Why can't you do something for us for once? That word once nearly made me laugh. I drew a steady breath. For once, all my life you've been given everything. Ballet classes, camps, cars, a $725K loan. And when I asked for $70,000 after years of working planning building, you said it was too risky. Do you hear yourselves? Rosie rolled her eyes. That was different. I stared at her. How explain the difference? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. My father cut in before she could try. We believed in her dream. She needed help. And I didn't. My voice remained even, but it vibrated in the air. When I asked for $70,000, I had a working prototype, clients willing to sign contracts, a plan. Everything you preach about responsibility, I lived it, but you looked me in the face and said, it's too risky. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We didn't want you to struggle. I held her gaze. I struggled anyway. The room was silent, air thick enough to cut. I continued my words slow and deliberate. When Rosie wanted a BMW to look successful, you borrowed an impossible amount of money without question. When her company failed, you shielded her from consequences. When the debt grew, you still found ways to blame bad luck. But when I built something real, when I fought for every inch of this life, you barely acknowledged it. My father shifted, uncomfortable. We trusted you to take care of yourself. I nodded once. That's exactly the difference. You trusted me to survive alone. You trusted her to be saved at every turn. Rosie huffed, defensive. You're being dramatic. This is family. Families help each other. I looked at her with a kind of sadness I hadn't expected. Families also recognize effort. They acknowledge sacrifice. They don't demand their children destroy the very things they built. My father's voice sharpened. So that's it. You'll let us lose everything. His words hit me hard, but not in the way he intended. For a moment, I saw the scared version of them, afraid of losing their home, their pride, the image they'd spent years maintaining through Rosie. But then I remembered myself, the nights I coded until dawn, the meals I skipped, the condo I fought to keep, and the voice that finally answered was steady and unbroken. I'm sorry you're struggling, I said. But I am not selling my home. My mother sobbed. Rosie scoffed. My father shook his head. They waited for me to crumble, to apologize, to explain. But instead, I gave them the only answer I owed. No. It came out quiet, but it carried the weight of every year I spent being overlooked, every apology I swallowed, Every dream dismissed. Rosie surged to her feet. "You're heartless." I didn't flinch. "No, I'm finally done being your backup plan." My father's face hardened. "You'll regret this." I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped aside. I already spent a lifetime regretting things that weren't mine to carry. Slowly, stiffly they stood. They walked past me, each step echoing the end of something I had tried so long to fix. My mother paused in the doorway, her eyes pleading for a version of me that no longer existed. I didn't speak. I didn't apologize. I simply closed the door. It clicked shut, soft, certain, final. Then I leaned against it, letting the silent condo settle around me. Tears gathered, fell, then stopped. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I had finally chosen myself. And for the first time in my life, choosing myself didn't feel selfish. It felt right. In the 6 months that followed, everything settled into a strange, quiet distance. I didn't block my parents, but the calls stopped. The texts stopped. Even the guilt stopped. All that remained were occasional updates from acquaintances in Austin, updates I listened to without reacting. The red brick house I grew up in was eventually mortgaged, then listed for sale. My father pulled from his retirement early. My mother spent more time at church than at home. Rosie moved in with her boyfriend, posting carefully curated photos that tried and failed to hide the fallout. Meanwhile, build flow surged forward. We signed multiple long-term contracts, doubled our team, and moved into a brighter office in a busier part of town. I left my small condo for a quiet rental house in Palo Alto with a tiny garden where I could breathe, think, and simply exist without walking on emotional eggshells. Some nights I sat outside with a cup of coffee listening to the distant hum of the neighborhood. The pain didn't disappear, but it softened, and in its place grew something steadier, something I had fought years to earn the certainty that choosing myself was not abandonment. It was survival. In the end, saying no didn't break my family, it simply revealed what was already cracked. I walked away from the guilt, the expectations, the years of being the dependable one who never deserved investment. And by choosing myself, I built a life defined not by approval, but by peace. If you've ever had to set a boundary that shook your world, tell me where you're listening from. Your story matters more than you think. And if mine resonated with you, stay subscribed and let's keep healing through the truth together.